Hello, my name is NJ Franco, and in an attempt to maintain a spoiler free booktube channel from here on out, these are the things that I define to be considered to be spoilers that I will now avoid using in my future book reviews. Also, if at any point you want to comment below things that you think should be considered spoilers that you want me to avoid in my future book reviews, please by all means comment them below so I know how to better produce my book reviews to avoid spoilers for my other audience members. Okay? Now, first off, character deaths. I think that one's super obvious. It shouldn't, most character deaths are considered to be spoilers. However, I think that there's an exception to that, and I also think there's an exception to the exception, which I'll go over in a minute. So, I think an exception should be made if a character dies early on in a book. Okay, for instance, if a character is introduced in chapter one and then they die in like chapter two, they're introduced and you don't really have time to like get attached to them or really like them or anything like that. So when they die, you're kind of like, whatever. I didn't really know the person, so whatever. They're dead. I don't care now. So I think that exception should be made, or better yet, books where a character dies before the book even starts. For those of you who have read A Christmas Carol or have at least seen any of the movie adaptations to A Christmas Carol, you know that the first line in A Christmas Carol is Jacob Marley was dead to begin with. Okay, so Jacob Marley, he dies before the book even starts. So I think something like that shouldn't be considered a spoiler. However, if you disagree with me and you're like, hey, a character death is a spoiler no matter how or when it happens, don't mention character deaths at all. I don't care if it's chapter one, I don't care if it's line one. If you feel that way, that there should be an exception made, comment below and I'll do my best to avoid even those spoilers in the future. And now, like I said, I feel like that there's an exception to the exception, though. So, if a character dies in like chapter one of a book, but that book is like book three or four in a series, and this character had already been established in one of the other books, and you had time to get to know that character, and you started to like them and get attached to them. Yeah, they die chapter one of this book, but they'd already been established, so some people, might get upset that that character dies and don't want that spoiler yet. So that exception, there should be an exception to that exception for like book series and whatnot. The other thing I would consider to be spoilers is romances or relationships. In the instance where it's a slow burn relationship where these two characters like start off not being in a relationship and you kind of see them grow attached or whatever, and you're like, ooh, are these two going to end up together? Are they not? I don't know. It's going to be a surprise. That kind of a relationship, divulging that early would be considered a spoiler, in my opinion. However, an exception should be made for already established relationships. For instance, I just finished reading Can't Spell Treason Without T, and the two main female characters of this book series are in a relationship together. Okay, their relationship is established way before the series even starts. They've been dating for years. So to say Chianti and Reina are, girlfriends, that's not a spoiler. They were already dating before the series even started. Also, I'm going to say this any opportunity I have. If you have problems with members of the LGBT community, uh, get the heck off my channel because I don't want you here. Okay? All right, cool. Now, the very last thing, I just kind of labeled this as miscellaneous because I didn't really, this is the catch all that if there is something as I'm reading a book and I'm like, you know what, this isn't a character death, this isn't a relationship, but if somebody divulged this to me before I had read this book, I'd be mad. Okay, that's a spoiler, even if it doesn't fit the other two categories. For instance, and don't worry, I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm just going to give an example. So right now, I am reading Bookshops and Bone Dust. Okay, and Bookshops and Bone Dust. One of the main parts of the book is the fact that it surrounds a bookshop. Okay, so hence the name Bookshop and Bone Dust. Now, the Bone Dust aspect of the book doesn't happen until much, much later, and you don't really see it coming. So, I when I do my review for this book, I'll say, I'm like, yeah, the whole bookshop part, that's obvious. The bookshop part of the title, that's obvious. The bone dust, not so much. But I'm not gonna tell you what it is because, in my opinion, that would be a spoiler. Nobody dies. There's no relationships. But because that question is answered much later in the book, I'm gonna save that for you to read, and you figure out why that is. So that's the miscellaneous. Would I be mad if somebody divulged this information to me before I read the book? So yeah. So that's all I've got. But like I said, if there are any other uh, things that I didn't list that you think, hey, you didn't think to mention this, and if you mention these, I see that as a spoiler or whatever the case may be. Again, please comment them below, and I will do my best to avoid those in future book reviews, especially if you plan on being a regular watcher of my book reviews in the future. But anyway, that's it for me. So until next time, remember, nothing in life is free except for liking, commenting, and subscribing. See ya.